Welcome to Moxie Bets presented by Caesars Sportsbook. I'm your host, Katie Mox. Coming up on today's show, the Divisional Round starts tomorrow, aka the best weekend in football. We'll give you our best bets from each game. Plus, we've opened up the prop shop and we've capped some great props for you to throw some money on as well. And you know it, we've got some Mox Locks coming your way. Before we get started, let's welcome in our guy, Kenny Bets Big. Kenny, how we feeling? Divisional weekend.
We'll be feeling a little better. Had the Bucks won on Monday, but put that behind us. Move on. We got games to win today.
We got games to win today, and I will say that was a huge disappointment for me. One, because I just wanted the Cowboys to lose just for personal reasons, and then it was kind of depressing to watch Tom Brady. You're my Tom Brady guy. Have you seen him look worse?
No, but I mean,
you thought about it.
No, he probably has not looked worse. I mean, there's probably was some games during the regular season he looked worse because the Bucs offense kind of looked pretty bad all year. But yeah, you got to just tip your hat to the Cowboys. They did some things, that night and confused them in the red zone. He threw his first red zone interception all year.
That was a killer.
Announcers jinxed that, right? Of course, they always put that graphic up on the screen and you know what's coming next.
Yep. The announcer jinx. Okay, well, no Mox thought today, so let's get right into Capper's Corner. We'll quickly take a look at the divisional round matchups here. All right, so we'll get into picks in a little bit, but Jags versus Chiefs, obviously big spread here. Chiefs -9. It was 8.5. That's already ticked up over under 52.5. What are your thoughts on this game? It's like, one, I think the Chiefs are so much better than the Jags. Obviously, they beat them 27-17, so they've already covered that earlier this year. However, this Jags team is a little bit different, but you can't trust the Chiefs with big spreads. What's your feeling on this game?
So, similar to last week, I think these games are pretty tough to handicap, a lot of them, because, like you talked about, they met earlier this season. The Jaguars won the turnover battle in that game, 3 turnovers to none. They started the game off with an onside kick recovery. And, and even still with all of that going their way, the Chiefs still win by double digits.
Yeah.
The Jaguars defense, they looked good last week. They were put into some bad predicaments because of the early turnovers by Trevor Lawrence, and they kind of stood their ground and didn't let things get too crazy. 27-0 is a big lead, but they didn't let things get out of hand. Like the Chargers should have put that game away, and the Jaguars defense stood there. But when the Jaguars are facing the upper echelon offensive teams, which the Chiefs are the number one offensive team in the NFL, they don't do very well. So I'm expecting a blowout here. But when you look at a lot of the divisional round trends, they all scream to take the Jaguars with the points here. But, I love a good underdog, and even I can't take myself to bet the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into picks with this game, but I tend to agree with you on all of those. What about the Eagles and the Giants? This one, huge divisional matchup. Eagles laying 7.5, over under 48. Jalen Hurts, not on the injury report, not 100%. Do you think the G-men have a chance here? Or do you think it's going to be a blowout?
No, I think the Giants have zero chance in this game. I think it's going to be very similar to the first time these two teams met. And it honestly just comes down to the stylistic mismatches, right? Like the Eagles, obviously they're the most well-rounded offensive team in football. They can run the ball, they can pass with Jalen Hurts, and they have, Brown and Devontae Smith and so many weapons around Jalen Hurts. But the Giants, terrible at stopping the run. So, in that first matchup, Miles Sanders ran absolutely crazy all over them.
Yeah.
I just think the Eagles, I know, again, those divisional round trends typically tell you not to bet these home favorites. But I'm looking at both of these games and I'm saying I don't see a way where the Jaguars are beating the Chiefs. And I really don't see the Giants pulling off this upset. I know, Giants fans and football fans are going crazy. And the Giants are kind of like that Cinderella team that the public is kind of gravitating towards. But I think that Cinderella story ends this week.
It's so interesting because you're not normally like a big home chalk guy, especially with these larger spreads, but you're looking at both of these matchups and you're saying, I'm taking the favorites on this one. You can't see. I like the Giants to cover. I like the Giants possibly for an upset here, but maybe I'm just drinking the blue Kool-Aid. I don't really know. Bengals versus Bills. Bills 5.5 point home chalk, over under 49. This game to me seems like it's going to be the closest game of all of them this weekend, especially with Josh Allen, the way that he turns the ball over. You can't do that with someone like Joe Burrow.
No, and we look at Joe Burrow. What is he, 8-0 against the spread in the playoffs for his
Yeah.
career? I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Those are like Tom Brady numbers in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, you're giving him and that offense 5.5 points, and obviously they didn't finish the game, so we can't speculate on how the game would have ended. But it started off. It looked like the Bengals were going to kind of start to run away with that game the way it started, and they were
Yeah.
driving, and then that injury happens. This is one I change my opinion every day. It feels like on this one. When the line opened up, I was like, "Oh, you got to go Bills here." But then I'm thinking Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, all those weapons.
Yep.
Do I really want to lay 5 points? This is one where I think it's very important to see where the money is and where the bets
Hmm.
are. Because let's say the Bengals are a very trendy dog, which I anticipate they will be, kind of similar to the Bucs on Monday Night Football. You never want to bet on a public dog. So let's say all the bets, all the money are on the Bengals. I will probably end up taking the Bills there in that spot.
And I think the reason why you keep going back and forth, as do I, if Josh Allen throws a clean game, then they're covering the spread. If he's turning the ball over all over the place like he has been doing and like he did against Miami, what do you have, 3 turnovers? They not only won't cover this game, but they might not even win this game. So it's like, do I trust Josh Allen or not? And that's where I'm at for this game. But again, I'll kind of get into my pick later. All right, so Cowboys, 49ers, Niners laying 4. This got down to 3, as low as 3 in some places. Opened up at 4.5, went down to 3.5. Then, of course, people started hammering it, and then it went to 4, over under 46.5. I love it when you don't pick the Niners.
Yeah, it's I'm coined the 49ers mush, and to your credit, I think I've faded the Niners since Brock Purdy's taken over several times, and I've been left with an egg on my face every single time.
I love it.
So, but I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again. I think the Cowboys here, especially getting 4, it's one of those. It's a weird line. I think it's a line that's set low enough to where it's going to entice everyone to just bet the Niners because what are they? They've won 11 straight now. They're beating teams on average by over 16 points per game. Like that doesn't happen in the NFL. Like that just does not happen.
Yeah.
We don't really see teams just fully dominate the other team consistently. I don't have to ask you where you're leaning, but I'm curious on your thoughts on this game.
Yes, and I'll have a pick for it a little bit later, but I think that this line should be at least a touchdown, at least 6.5. I think that this line is too small. And yes, the Cowboys and Dak Prescott looked really, really good last week. But that was against the Bucs and the 49ers. Like you said, it's a different team. Nobody's winning by these margins. Nobody's won this amount of games going. And this is a crazy super team where they're number 1 on both sides of the ball. And they just have a million different ways to beat you. And especially in the second half, like even if the Niners get down or even if it's close in the first half, we've seen what's happened in the second half of these games. So look, you might want to look, if the Niners ever get down, take them in the second half. You know what I mean? Hammer them live in the second half based on what's been happening. But I think that this line is an overreaction to how good Dak looked last week. And I don't think he's going to look that good against the 49ers. But again, we will get more into that a little bit later. But instead of going game by game, we're going to do our best bets for each category. Not each category, but some of the categories. So let's talk quarterbacks. Of the 4 games, what's a quarterback bet that you're looking at?
Yeah, so and rightfully so, he balled out in his first playoff game. But the Daniel Jones love, we got to pump the brakes on it, right? I mean, he definitely looks better this year compared to years past. He's cut back on the turnovers tremendously, which has helped him a lot.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, the guy's average. I think we can both agree on that. What did he throw? 15 touchdown passes this year? He's an average quarterback.
I don't know. I think he's been playing above average. But I mean, I guess if you look at the other 32, I feel like this is a very Jimmy Garoppolo thing, though, where everyone's like, oh, he's just average. He's winning. He's winning.
He is winning, right? But so last week was his third 300 passing yard game of the season. 2 of those were against the Vikings, who, if people listening, if you're not aware, the Vikings pass defense is one of the worst in the NFL. And then his third was against the Lions, which we know the Lions were just like a swinging revolving door for touchdowns this year. They were just shootouts left and right.
Yeah.
So he goes from facing the 26th ranked pass defense in the Vikings to facing the number one pass defense this week in the Philadelphia Eagles. And Katie, I want to ask you a question. So his prop line is set at 216 and a half yards, Daniel Jones. How many
Passing
quarterbacks
yards?
this year do you think went over that number versus the Philadelphia Eagles?
Ooh, I feel like this is a trick question because it seems like a low amount of passing yards. But it is the Eagles. Let's say how many individual times or just like how many quarterbacks?
Yeah, just how many individual times?
Let's say, I don't know, 10?
Two. Two
Two.
quarterbacks. Yeah, yeah. Only two times this year has a
Ooh.
quarterback thrown for over 216 yards against the Eagles. Dak
And
Prescott
they're
and
expecting
Kyler
Danny
Murray.
Dimes to do that this weekend. That's crazy, actually. This is a good one.
Yeah, I
I
was
love
as
this.
I was like looking up these stats, I was like, let me see how many quarterbacks have thrown for more yards against the Eagles. And I was as I was going, nope, nope, nope. I was like, holy shit, their defense is really good. Yeah, so I
And
mean,
you know what?
you look at those.
Yeah, sorry. Their defense is underrated. I feel like people talk about the 49ers all the time. People talk about Dallas all the time. And you don't hear as much about the Eagles and how stout. That's crazy. Only two quarterbacks. And by the way,
Yeah,
216 and a half yards is not a lot.
no, it's not a lot at all. And I mean, like even Aaron Rodgers, he only threw for I think like 160, 170 yards when he faced the Eagles. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a middle of the road quarterback here, Daniel Jones, who's he's had a great year, but he's coming off one of his biggest, best performances of his career. Public talking about him all week. That's all you turn on TV. Danny Dimes, he's the next future franchise quarterback of the Giants. You know what to do when things are up here. It always
Mhm.
regresses back down to the mean. So yeah, I think we can fade Danny Dimes here. I'm taking his under passing yards prop.
Okay, I wouldn't have thought that I would like that, but I do really like that considering the analysis that you just gave us. All right, well, I'm taking Brock Purdy under point 0.5 interceptions, no picks for Mr. Irrelevant. Yes, Dallas is the best defense that Purdy has faced, and the boys lead the league in takeaways this season with 33. However, all the Niners need Purdy to do is be a point guard, distribute the ball to his many weapons of mass destruction, and a lot of that will be running the football. Dallas's clear weakness is the run defense, which ranks 22nd in yards allowed per game and 17th in yards per carry allowed. Purdy's going to stay clean in the playoffs. I think they're going to protect him and have him hand the ball off a lot. So I like him under the interception prop, and that's at minus 108.
Does it scare you a little how because I feel like as he plays like each game, I feel like he gets more and more comfortable, which obviously rightfully so, right? He's going out there, he's performing at a very high level. But like last week, he threw the ball 19 times in that first half versus the Seahawks. So I feel like they're kind of getting into where he's just kind of going out there and slinging it around. And if you've watched Brock Purdy in college, he's very talented, but sometimes he gets himself into
Yeah.
trouble by throwing the ball,
Yeah.
just getting gun happy.
I agree, and I will say he didn't have the receiving core or the weapons at Iowa that he has here. And there's sometimes where he does have questionable throws, and someone like Ayuk or Kittle, they just make these catches happen, or Debo or Christian McCaffrey. So I agree with you. I also think when you game plan for Dallas and the fact that they lead the league in takeaways, then I think you're going to want to run the ball a little bit more. We saw that he was like a little bit shaky last week too. It kind of got him. He was making some bad throws there in the beginning, so maybe he has those again, and they run the ball. But I still think no interceptions for Brock Purdy. I know he's got 4 this season in 8 games or 9 games, but he didn't have one versus Seattle, and I expect him to stay clean again. So let's from quarterbacks, let's move on to their weapons. Let's talk about a receiving prop. What do you like?
So I think you'll like this one. Brandon Ayuk. I'm going to take his over prop, which it's set at 54 and
Love
a
it.
half yards on Caesars.
Love it.
It's minus 115. So low juice, nothing crazy. But Dallas has struggled against opposing number 2 wide receivers all year, especially when their number 2 cornerback, Anthony Brown, went down with his Achilles injury. Since he's
Yeah.
gone down, number 2 wide receivers have just been torching them all year. They're actually dead last in DVOA versus opposing number 2 wide receivers. And then
Mm.
you look at Ayuk and his connection with Brock Purdy. Since Brock Purdy's taken over as the full-time starter, in 5 out of the 6 games, he's gone over this number. So I think
Yep.
we'll see that kind of continue this on Sunday. And I like him to go over his yards.
I love that. And I also love it when the announcers do the, are you kidding me? That's one of my favorite things. And like you said, Brock Purdy and Ayuk have a great connection. And Brandon Ayuk is one of those ones that just happens to get open downfield. And he gets some of those really long receptions too. So I might look at his longest reception because he's kind of one of those big breakaway guys. This is probably my squarest bet that I have. I'm taking Travis Kelce over 79.5 receiving yards. Is at minus 135. Look, y'all already know I love a tight end prop. I give a tight end prop almost every single day. And who better to invest in than Travis Kelce? He's a nightmare matchup for the Jags as he led tight ends in all categories this season: receptions, yards, touchdowns, you name it. And the Jags have been really soft to the tight end position this season, giving up the 3rd most yards and the 5th most yak per reception to the position. Kelce also torched Jacksonville for 81 yards in week 10. And he's not averaged less than 100 yards in the playoffs in the last 2 seasons. So to me, Kelsey's going to have a big, big game, 79.5. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets around 100. I think 79.5 is too low.
It feels kind of like, the situation where we did with Kittle a couple times, where you could probably take Kelce 90, 100 plus yards and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Well, especially if you think this game's going to get out of hand and the Chiefs could win by double digits. I mean, why not feed the big man? So, and they get torched by tight ends. But let's move on to the ground game rushing prop. What do you think?
Going Miles Sanders, his line set at 66.5. We're going to take that over. I already talked about the Giants and how things went in that first matchup. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. The Eagles just have too many weapons, and there's just mismatches all over the field on offense and defense. So if the Eagles jump out to an early lead, which they're one of the strongest teams in the first half, they're just going to rely on Miles Sanders, kind of like they did in that first game. He ran for 17 carries, 144 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Giants dead last in rush DVOA on the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, like I said, it's just glaring mismatches for these G-men this week, and it's not going to be a pretty game for them.
I think they're going to rely on Miles Sanders a lot too, and I like him to have a big game. I love that bet. Mine kind of goes hand in hand there, so I'm going to take Hurts under his rushing attempts. That's at 8.5. So he's averaged over this number throughout the season at 11 per game. That said, the Eagles had virtually no design plays for him in week 18. He did have 9 attempts, but he only had 7 in the week 14 matchup where it was like more of a blowout. So if you think this is going to be another blowout, then I can see that. And look, the Giants defense ranked 3rd to last in defensive DVOA, and they rank last against the run in multiple categories, which is why I like your bet so much. But Jalen Hurts is not 100%. He might not be in the injury report, but he's not 100%. We've heard all kinds of reports that he's been taking it easy in practice, not taking. They need him. They need him to be healthy. They got to win this game, but they need him for the rest of the postseason. I think that they're going to be protecting him more because one bad hit and he's toast. And if he's toast, their season is toast. So I think he's going to stay in the pocket. I don't think there's going to be a lot of design run plays for him. And I like the value here. It's at plus 118.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you think that, like I was saying, where I think the Eagles can win this in so many different ways. Like, why put your best player in harm's way, right? Especially when you said if they lose him, we saw like Gardner Minshew, he's a nice backup, but he's not winning a Super Bowl with this team. So I like that one a lot.
And let's say you're right and the Eagles win this game. And then they got to play the 49ers because obviously the 49ers are winning their game. You need Jalen Hurts to beat the 49ers. So if especially if things are going well, like let's say, the Eagles are the best first half team in the league. Let's say they get out to a big lead. You really think that they're going to be playing with Jalen Hurts in the second half on design runs? No way. Absolutely not. So at plus money, I like him under this. Speaking of defenses.
Hold on. I was going to say you would hope not. But I mean, like we can just look back a couple weeks ago to what Brandon Staley did with Mike Williams, right? In a game that meant absolutely nothing. He has his best offensive weapon out on the field and loses him for the playoffs. So, yeah, we would hope Nick Sirianni is not as useless as Brandon Staley is. Yeah. So, but I like that bet a lot on the Hurts.
Eagles fans are in a twist that you compared Sirianni to Staley there, but all right, let's move on for the defense. What's a defensive prop that you've isolated for us this weekend?
Yeah, so I'm looking at Chris Jones, interior defensive lineman for the Chiefs, if you don't know. Over 2.5 tackles and assists. It's minus 150. It's a little juicy on Caesars. I am going to also look to take him to record a sack when they release that. That wasn't out yet. So I am going to also look at that. But when these two teams met earlier this year, Trevor Lawrence was sacked 5 times. And
Oof.
that was without Frank Clark, and George Karlaftis was not playing at the level he's playing now. So I think the Chiefs' defensive line and front seven is much, much more dangerous now compared to the first time these teams met. And then you look, he's the number 2 ranked interior defensive lineman according to Pro Football Focus. When they played the first time, he had 2 sacks, 5 tackles, 3 of those for a loss. So yeah, I think Jags O line banged up. Their center and one of their tackles was limited in practice this week. So I think this is a matchup where the Chiefs front seven is just going to feast on Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and I think my dad told me we were watching the game last week. I had no idea that Trevor Lawrence and I guess Justin Herbert are both 6'6". That is a big
Really?
quarterback. That is 6'6". So tall. So I think, maybe I don't know if that's harder or easier to tackle a big, huge body like that. But I do see them feasting on him. I don't know. Every time somebody brings up Trevor Lawrence, I think about him being 6'6" and an actual basketball player. I don't know. I digress. When it comes to this prop, you already know where I'm going. Give me the rightful defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa. To get in some Bosa bear hugs on Dak Prescott, I like him over 3.5 tackles and assists. And this is at plus money as well, plus 106. Bosa is a game wrecker. Okay, he has 37 total tackles against the NFC this season. 29 of those are solo, 12.5 sacks. A majority of those impressive stats happen to take place at Levi Stadium, where Bosa has racked up 33 total tackles, 30 of them solo. This game is going to be won in the trenches. I think we're all excited to see the back and forth between Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa trying to outdo each other every single snap. Last week against the Seahawks, Bosa was responsible for 5 total tackles. And especially with the Cowboys O-line, Jason Peters likely going to be ruled out with that hip injury. I like him to have similar success this week. So give me over the 3.5 and at plus money all day.
I mean, Bosa changed the whole, trajectory of that game with that sack fumble on Geno Smith in the red zone.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
right, it was looking like the Seahawks were alive there in the third quarter. I had them plus 10. They're in the red zone. I'm like, all right, there's no way that the Niners are going to get me here. And then Bosa comes in with the strip fumble, and that was all she wrote.
That was all she wrote. So, I mean, I'm sure you're excited to see both Micah Parsons because they're aware of each other. Micah Parsons was leading the Defensive Player of the Year voting and everything at the beginning of the season, and then Nick Bosa came out and just destroyed him in it. But they're going to be like looking at each other, on the sideline and want to outdo each other, every time they come in the game. Who do you think has a more successful game? Do you think it's Micah Parsons or Nick Bosa?
I think it's weird because I think Micah Parsons, the Cowboys need him to have a better game. But on the flip side, I think the Niners obviously are aware of that, and they're probably going to game plan to really stop him more. Whereas the Niners defense has more pieces that it's harder to just game plan for Nick Bosa, right? Because there's so many good, talented players on their defense. So it's tough. That's a tough question. I'm going to go Micah Parsons just because I think the Cowboys win the game.
Yeah, I mean, to your point too, I think they'll treat him like they treat an Aaron Donald and put everybody on him. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it's definitely going to be like a fun battle to see. And but I still think that Nick Bosa is going to get over 3.5 tackles and assists. I think that's easy pickings for him. But let's take a quick break before we get into some more props. With Caesars Sportsbook and Casino, every bet earns with Caesars Rewards. That means whether you win or lose, you're always earning towards perks like free stays at iconic Caesars properties, game tickets, dining, and more. And if you haven't started yet, here's a reminder. Your first bet is on Caesars, up to $1,250. Download the app with promo code OMAHAFULL and place your first bet. If you win, congrats. If you don't, you'll get it back as a free bet. Back on Moxie Bets here with Kenny Bets Big. And we're talking props for divisional weekend. And now we're moving on to kickers. Whew. Speaking of kickers, the kicker from Dallas had a tough game. I think he's the only kicker in history, right, to miss four extra point attempts. He had the yips. But what is your favorite kicker prop for this weekend? And by the way, what's his name? Myers, the kicker?
Brett Maher.
Oh, Brett Maher. He doesn't even have. You can't even bet on him right now because they don't even know what to do with him with the books. But anyways, what's your favorite kicking prop?
Yeah, and shout out to CeeDee Lamb. I don't know if you caught the clip of CeeDee Lamb like consoling Brett Maher on the sideline.
I
Great
love that.
teammate. Yeah, I really like
Unlike
CeeDee
Dak
Lamb after that.
Prescott. Yeah, Dak Prescott was throwing his helmet, and I was like, sir, you lead the league in interceptions.
Yeah.
You have cost this team more points than the kicker has. Sit down.
Yeah, I mean, he cost him the game versus the Jags, right? Um,
Yes.
so I'm looking at Jake Elliott over 7.5 kicking points. So 2 field goals, couple extra points, 3 field goals. I just see the Eagles moving the ball at will. And even if the Giants are somehow able to stop them, that just helps us more with this prop because they're going to end up kicking field goals. I just don't really see the Giants defense doing much to slow down the Eagles this weekend. And it's weird because, like you said, I'm not normally a chalk bettor. I usually run away from the chalk. But I'm looking at this, and how is anyone putting their money on the Giants here? It's mind-boggling to me.
I am. I love the G-Man. I think, like, again, maybe it's that I'm drinking the blue Kool-Aid, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But I love the G-Man. I just like Brian Dable. I think he's a dog. And, they're not a team that's going to blow you out, but they're a team that just keeps fighting and won't go away. I think it's going to be closer than people think it is. I like the 7.5, but I'm not mad at the money line either. But yeah, we'll be able to see how that after the first quarter or the first half for sure. We'll be able to tell how that game is going to go. And hopefully it's a G-Man. All right, but if I'm going to put money on a kicker this weekend, I'm going to bet on Evan McPherson over 2.5 made extra points. It's at plus 146. Plus money again, people. I'm giving all plus money today, basically, except for Kelsey. So last year in the playoffs, the then rookie kicker went 4 for 4 on field goals against the Raiders in the wild card. Then he won another 4 for 4 against the Titans in the divisional round. And then he won another 4 for 4 performance against the Chiefs. So I know I'm not taking him on the field goals. I'm taking the extra points. But this season, he's continued to live up to his nickname. And he's making 24 field goals on 29 attempts, including going 5 for 5 on kicks between 50 and 59 yards. And you're telling me that all we need him to do is make the extra point? I mean, this guy's making field goals from way down the field. We just need him to make 2.5 extra points here. I'm sorry, but I love this. I already like the over in this game. Buffalo's defense has not been as stout as of late as we kind of hoped them to be. And Josh Allen's turnover habit against a guy like Joe Burrow could be a problem. I think that the Bengals can easily get 3 scores. And McPherson, whose nickname is Money Mac, he's going to make us all money. He's making those kicks. If he can make all those field goals last year, he can make the extra points. And I do think that the Bengals get at least 3 scores.
I don't hate it, especially because, like you said, for it to happen, the Bengals just need 3 touchdowns. And who's saying that, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and those guys? Yeah. I mean, but as good as Evan McPherson has been, and for his career, it's funny because he actually has missed a couple extra points as of late, right? Like he missed one in the Ravens game. He missed a few, I think, against the Bucs when they played. So he has missed a few extra points, but just to get 3 of them, I think he could easily do that. And what'd you say was plus 166?
146.
Yes, I mean,
you just
can't be mad at that.
Look at him. You look what he did last year in the playoffs. And yes, that Ravens game, but the Ravens and the Bengals know how to play each other really, really well. And so sometimes those divisional matchups, I feel like, go a little bit differently. I don't know. The kid was a stud last year, and I definitely think the Bengals get 3 scores, and I don't think he's missing these kicks. Speaking of scores, who do you like to get 6? Anytime touchdown.
I'm going to go Dallas Goedert, Philadelphia Eagles. If you haven't realized the trend here, I just think the Eagles offense is going to be money this week. Listen, he's a big red zone target. The Eagles love to run that RPO offense where they, kind of fake the handoff. Jalen Hurts looks like he's going to run, and the defense kind of bites in to stop him, and then he just dumps it right over the top of them for an easy touchdown. And the G-Men, 31st in the NFL in DVOA versus opposing tight ends. Saw what TJ Hawkinson did to them last week. I gave you that prop last week for Hawkinson over catches. That hit easy, and I think we'll see more of that. I like Goddard to get in the end zone.
I love that. And this is my one love for the Cowboys. I'm taking Dalton Schultz plus 195. Schultz was the only thing they cashed for me last week against the Bucks when Tom Brady let everybody down. He's been the guy for Dak Prescott recently in the red zone. He had 2 touchdowns against the Bucks and then the Titans as well. And where are the Niners the most vulnerable? In the secondary. I do think that the Cowboys are going to get into the red zone, and most likely he's going to be throwing to Schultz. So at plus 195, I think it's pretty good that he's going to go for a touchdown here. All right, Kenny, now for a long shot bet. And look, this is not necessarily one that we're taking to the window, but if you had to throw some money down on something, what do you think?
Talked about it a little bit before. Travis Kelce, 2 touchdowns. You can find it. It's plus 360 on Caesar Sportsbook. And, when you hear plus 360 for 2 touchdowns, doesn't that sound awfully low to you?
Well, especially because he's had 3 touchdowns in multiple games this season.
Yeah, so, playoffs, pressure, Mahomes, where's he throwing the ball? He's throwing to his guy 87.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Travis Kelce is going to feast. I talked about how bad the Giants are against tight ends. The only team worse than them are the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when you're bad at covering the tight end, the last team you want to see is the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. So I think Kelce's going to have a monster game.
I absolutely love that. My long shot bet is an extreme long shot and a homer bet, but I'm taking San Francisco 49ers to win all 4 quarters at plus 1,600. I think that this line is too low. I think it should be by at least a touchdown. And, if Dak Prescott has a game like he had against the Washington Commanders, then this is going to be an easy plus 1,600 cash. But again, it's an extreme long shot bet. All right. Any teasers or parlays that you're looking at for the divisional round?
So I don't have any teasers. I mean, there are some teasers. Like I think you could. It sounds so square, but I think you could tease the Chiefs and the Eagles. But I personally would not put my money on that, just because I know that that's just a square bet, and it usually is not profitable long term. So I made my own. Called it the tight end special. You look at these matchups. Yeah, I knew you'd like that one. It's got your guy in there, Kittle. So. You look at these defenses and, a lot of them have the same weakness. They're not very good at covering the tight end. And we've seen it before where it's just a week of the big men. I think the big guys, a lot of them find the end zone. So if you go Kelce touchdown, Dallas Goedert touchdown, George Kittle touchdown, it's plus 1,026. I think you can add you said Schultz in there. I think you could add him in there. And
Schultz,
I think
Dawson Knox. Why don't we just put all the tight ends? Put all the tight ends in a parlay, and we can call it the. Yeah, I mean, I love a tight end, so I'm super stoked on this. I'm tailing this for sure, and I might add in a Dawson Knox with the Bills or a Schultz. Although I don't know that you can add on Caesars 2 from the same game. I think they've all got to be in separate games. But if you added Dawson Knox, it's a plus 3,391.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth a sprinkle because, especially in these playoff games, these quarterbacks rely on their security blanket. And oftentimes the tight end is that security blanket, right? Like when you're in the red zone where things get tighter and the defense shrinks, you look for the big body, the guy who can easily seal off his defender. And I think a lot of these guys are going to find the end zone this weekend.
I love this, and I'm tailing this 100%. All right, let's get into Mox Locks. Your best bet for each game, starting with the Jags and the Chiefs. I will go first. I'm taking the Chiefs in the first half -6. Look, you can't trust the Chiefs against the spread in the full game. As much as I think they're going to win this game, their against the spread record would say otherwise, but I do like them to come out swinging. Plus, even with that epic comeback, Lawrence he still threw 4 picks in the first quarter alone, and I don't think he's mastered the nerves on an even bigger stage in the loudest stadium in the NFL. The Chiefs also rank number 3 in first half points, averaging 18 in their last 3, and the Jags all the way down to number 15 with 11 points on average. So I think that they covered the 6 in the first half, and I do think that they win the game the whole time, but the Chiefs let people stick around a little longer than I'd like.
Yeah, they're kind of like the Warriors in that sense, right? Where I think they know there's a switch they can just flip on and just turn it up a notch. So I feel like they often they kind of play with their food, like they play down to their competition sometimes. I'm going to stick kind of with what you're doing there. I'm going to go Chiefs first quarter money line, but I'm going to do a 3-way money line. So to save us some juice there. Yeah, so it will take it down to -128 on the first quarter 3-way line.
I love that. Okay, let's ride all day. All right, Giants and Eagles. You already know it. Give me the Giants plus the 7.5. I actually think the G-Men can win this game. Again, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but in case you haven't heard, New York has been covering machines all year long. They're 14-4 against the spread, including the playoffs. They're 8-1 against the spread on the road. The Eagles have lost 4 straight playoff games as favorites and have failed to cover in their past 5 January games. Jalen Hurts, not listed on the injury report, not exactly 100%. I'm going with the Hungry Dogs. You know what they say, Kenny? Hungry Dogs run faster.
They do say that. I think I've said that before. So I'm not betting this because, like you said, I'm not a chalk better. I could never bring myself to bet the Eagles minus 7.5. The boat has left the port for that before that line ticked up to 7.5. A lot of sharp bettors were taking Eagles 6.5, 7. And once they hit that 7.5, it's just kind of a dead line. So I'm going to stay away, but I do think the Eagles win this game going away.
All right, so moving on to Bengals and Bills. I'm going to take the over 49. This was 48.5. Now it's 49. I still like it. Both offenses rank top 7 in total passing offense. In fact, the Bengals have thrown for 36 touchdowns this season. That's the second most in the NFL. Buffalo averaged about 28 points per game this season. However, that number increased to 31 in their last 5 games. Everyone thought that the under was a lock for the wild card round, but what did the Bills do? They allowed the Finns to put up 31 points with their third string quarterback. Joe Burrow was more than ready to capitalize on Josh Allen's turnover issues and turn this game into a shootout. So give me the over and then give me McPherson to make all of those field goals.
When you're looking at this
Not
game,
field goals, extra points. Sorry.
When you're looking at this game, do you think because of how the first game went, right, with the DeMar Hamlin injury, and obviously they've played a few games, but do you think they're, I don't know, a little tight on the field maybe?
It's going to be an emotional game. You got to think DeMar Hamlin's got to be like in the crowd or in a the owner's box or something. I think it's going to be an emotional game. It might be a little bit jumpy at first. It might take them a while, to settle into this. But I think all of the pressure is on Buffalo's shoulders. One, this is their year, and they've got to, they're expected to win the whole thing and certainly get to the AFC Championship game. And on top of the DeMar Hamlin stuff, and maybe it'll be a weird game for Jamar Chase. Was it Jamar Chase? No, it wasn't. It was T. Higgins. So maybe it'll be a weird game for T. Higgins as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little jumpy at first, but I think all the pressure is on the Bills, and all of it boils down to, can Josh Allen throw a clean game? And I don't know. I would lean Bengals plus the 5.5, but I do think I think it's going to be higher scoring. So I like the over.
Yeah, I like what I think. I agree with you. I think this game should fly over. I was shocked when I saw that the total was set at 48. I thought this would be one in the 50s as well with both of these offenses. Right now, I lean Bengals 5.5. It's hard to bet against Joe Burrow, especially getting points in the playoffs. Like, we just see what the guy does. The line is screaming that the Bills win this game going away, though. Like, any casual sports fan walking up to bet this game is going, you're giving me the Bengals here, getting, what are they, plus 190 on the money line? Mm-hmm. So like any just casual bettor that, is not really doing research and diving into analytics and numbers, they're just going, oh, give me the Bengals on the money line, or give me the Bengals plus 5 here. And we all know how that goes. But right now I lean Bengals. I'm on the square side there.
Yeah, I am too, but I definitely think it's going to be more of a shootout here. Okay, moment of truth, Cowboys and 49ers. I mean, I guess I already know you're taking the points with the Cowboys here, which I appreciate from you as the 49ers mush.
Yeah. Well, luckily, Dak and America's team, I don't root for them often, but they're gonna end that mush curse you put on me here.
Okay.
Listen,
you put it squarely on yourself.
As good as the 49ers are on defense, the Cowboys are right behind them, right? The Cowboys offense, they're number 11 in offensive DVOA. They probably would be top 5 if Dak didn't go down. Since he's come back from injury, they're averaging 32 points per game. They're the only team that's had 4 turnovers in multiple games, like forced 4 turnovers in multiple games. We've seen it during the regular season. When this team gets hot, they can get hot and rattle off a lot of points, right? They had games of 40, 49, 50-something points. So I just feel like it kind of feels like the Cowboys are getting hot at the right time. And what I envision, I see the Cowboys versus the Eagles, NFC Championship game. Dak's healthy, Jalen Hurts is healthy, and we finally get to see those teams play with their starting quarterbacks.
So sad that you're never going to be able to see that because Dallas is going to lose this game. Look, give me the Niners +4. I mean, -4. I think that this line should be higher, and it should be at least a touchdown or 6.5. And again, like I can't take anything away from how Dak Prescott played against the Bucs. He looked phenomenal. But the Bucs defense is not the 49ers defense. And I don't know that, well, the Cowboys haven't played the 49ers this year, so they haven't played the best defense in the league. Can Dak throw a clean game against, I mean, yes, the secondary for the 49ers isn't scaring anybody, but he's going to be rattled. He's going to be under a lot of pressure. I think he's going to make some mistakes, and you just can't make the level of mistakes that Dak Prescott is capable of making against the 49ers with all of the weapons that they have on offense. They'll just punish you for it every single time. So give me those Niners -4. And so we'll see if you get a happy Katie Mox on Monday or if you get a depressed one. Maybe I don't show up for work. No, this is gonna, of course, I'm always going to show up for work, but it'll be a very sad day if somehow Kenny is right on this one and breaks his mush curse, which I don't expect to happen.
Can you at least agree that the Cowboys are a team, like they have the pieces, right? Like I feel like
Yes.
they're one of the only teams that can really compete.
They have the pieces. I agree with you 100%. Now, what they do with those pieces is inconsistent. And that's been something that's plagued the Cowboys for years to come. They've had the #1 offense for like 5 years in a row now, 3 years in a row. They've been able to score the most points, but they're just so up and down and they can't stay consistent. And this year with Dak Prescott leading the league or co-leading the league with interceptions, that's hurt them a lot. And by the way, he co-led it after being out for 8 weeks or something. So it's like, they have the pieces. Can they execute? I trust the 49ers to execute based on what they've shown us over the last 11 games more than I trust Dallas to execute. That's where I'm at.
That's fair. Yeah, either way, I think it's going to be an amazing game. I think it ultimately comes down to a field goal, probably who has the ball last type of game. And it should be a fun one.
Well, if it comes down to a field goal, then give me Robbie G all day long. All right, Kenny. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesars Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social @Moxie Bets, and we'll see you on Monday.